consistently is fuel. The next one we are moving on to is food, and then the next one will be medicines, right? And if you look at our fuel consumption, as at last year, we consumed over 6 billion liters of the fuels domestically, right? Now, about a week ago, we started asking what our national reserve capacity is and whether we really have reserves, because whenever anything happens anywhere, it just hits us, right? And if you look at other countries, they are building strategic reserves of almost everything, so that should there be any global issues that must affect them, at least they have something to fall back on. But we don't seem to have that. So luckily, the NPA boss was in Senchi over the weekend, met the Energy Committee in Parliament, and he told them that, look, we have reserves of fuel, and that if anything happens globally, we should be able to go for about 2 months. Okay. Now, that, if you look at the data on the NPA's website, it's really not accurate. The figures he gave were about 200 million liters of petrol and about 150 million liters of diesel. If you look at our national domestic supply for January and February this year, 2025, on the NPA's website, for petrol, we've done 500 million liters. And for diesel, we've done 420 million liters. You can look at LPG, you can look at premixed fuel, you can look at ATK, you can look at marine gas oil, and all these things, we need them. The gas oil for the mines, the gas oil for our power plants, gas oil for cell sites, fuel oil for industrial use, fuel oil for power plants. They are all here. And I'll just limit it to petrol and diesel.
Please do.
If you put petrol and diesel, the numbers together, we've done 920 million liters for January and February, which is 2 months. There's the data for the other months, but I just want to stay within 2 months, because he said we have enough to last us for about 2 months. And the numbers he gave were 200 million liters for petrol, 150 million liters of diesel.
350.
So 350. But in 2 months, we did January, February, we did 920 million. So we need 3 times what he mentioned.
Yes.
Realistically.
We're looking at 3 weeks.
Yes.
We actually
And I've not added the other ones. Okay. And I am worried, because we cannot live in a country that suffers when things happen globally. Look, when COVID happened, you see, one of the reasons why our food inflation for years kept going up, when COVID happened, you import seed from abroad, you import fertilizer, you import weedicides, you import pesticides. So everything shot up.
Yeah.
We import fuel, we import all sorts of things. So what is our strategic plan? We've been looking at some of the work that has been done by the Energy Commission and all those. You know, at a point, one of the recommendations was that we should look at abandoned mining pits and shafts and convert them into strategic storage tanks for our fuels. And in this country, if you look at the fuel system, most of the fuel companies import at least enough to last for 2 weeks. So we're on a cycle like that.
Yeah.
And I think that we cannot live in this country without having anything to fall on.
But I feel that strategically there's a solution before us. Many did not pay attention to the visit of Aliko Dangote during the swearing in of John Dramani Mahama. Fortunately, he is a private individual that has set up a refinery.
Yeah.
Historically, and if you've read the literature around some of those who've worked with the PNDC government, you see clearly that for a long time, even before we started exploration, we used to, in one way or the other, use Nigeria as a backup plan in terms of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I feel that's where we need to go back to, because if you look at how Dangote himself is being treated in his country, it appears that he's looking more outward than inward, because the cabal obviously would not allow him. So this is the time for me, I feel, that you have the NPA, the energy minister, who've already visited his plant, going back there to engage him, so we can have more supply towards the Ghana.
That is true, but you need 3 things to make this work. You need funding, dedicated funding to ensure we build national strategic stocks of the key things we need. You need infrastructure. Winston, how much storage capacity do you think Bost has?
Tell me.
If you look at Bost, their storage capacity for the two key fuels we use when it comes to petrol and diesel, we are looking at about 250 million liters for diesel, 174 million liters for petrol. If you put this together,
it can't even last you for 2 months.
If you put this together, it's about 426 million liters, right?
1 month.
1 month. Now, and even this is not really strategic storage. It is storage capacity used to move and distribute products across the country.
Because it's capital intensive. I guess that's where the challenge is coming from.
You see, if the state cannot do it, then the state should incentivize somebody to do it. But there are certain things where the capital needed is so huge. That's where you expect the state to come in.
Yeah.
So we cannot always say that, oh, look, the BOST should be able to do this. Tor.
Yeah.
Now we're hearing Tor would resume full operations in October. We hear that all the time. I mean, we explain too many problems in this country. We never act.
You see, for the average Ghanaian, this is the problem. If we're a country that has strategic stocks to last us 2 years, for example, and something massive like this Iran-Israel war is happening, and global crude oil prices rose by even 50% or even 100%, and we did not have the money, we could fall on our strategic stocks to keep supply going and the prices at a very good place. Then we find a strategy to beat the global happenings and the global issues, but we don't. So Blessed, look, today, if there is a war globally, a combat rough, because you spent money on all sorts of things, one warehouse, one district, but there's no food anywhere. What is our strategic maize stock? Can anybody in government tell us that you have 200 million bags of maize stored? So a combat, look, in the Bible, and permit me, Winston, for 1 minute. The story of Joseph in Egypt.
Yes.
When he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, there was going to be famine, but before the famine, they worked to store enough food to feed themselves and the sub-region.
Yeah.
And the famine that was quoted in the Bible is synonymous with modern things that happen, wars, disruptions to the global supply chain and all those things. So who sits down to say that Ghana is in a very crazy world where things don't flow smoothly all the time? So let's fix our strategic needs. Ochina, if matter come, where are you going to get your malaria drugs?
That's why I still hold my view that our strategy should be short term for now. Because if you are thinking long term, you cannot have any solution practically in a space of a year or two. Almost all the interventions that the energy ministry is doing, the government is planning, are all 5 years plus, right? So your immediate term should be getting a reliable source. And for me, that's why I'm going back to the argument about getting our big brother supporters, because in terms of energy flow, you cannot do without countries such as Nigeria, and we need to bring in supplies from there, because that's where reliability will come through. The gas pipeline, for instance, that the energy ministry is the second gas processing plant we're building, will take not less than 5 years. I mean, that's a capital intensive project. So if you have that working and that coming on board, you will not have it within the next 5 years. Energy now is recurrent. How do you plug that hole, and how do you provide the energy, and how do you keep the gas pipeline flowing? So these things are the reason for which I say let's plan short term. Let's solve the immediate challenge of our strategic reserve, and then later we think about the capital.
You know what most 60-year-olds do? They go on retirement, then they sit back and enjoy what they've worked for, their pension, their savings, and their investments. Our country is 60 years old,
and we've lost the opportunity.
68
years, and cannot afford to sit back and enjoy any retirement. Gold, we messed it up. Cocoa, we messed it up. That's my concern.